Well, good morning, guys. It's good to be with you fellas again. Uh, as we journey on during this virus situation and all, but hope you guys are all doing well. And lessons today is continuing on in the book of Proverbs, and about living wisely is the title of our lesson, and just a lot of great information and all the tools and everything that we need in order to be able to live wisely. But we'll talk about it. Very interesting and informative, and it's just everything that we need. And it always amazes me at how everything is so intertwined and all connected and everything, and how it's just God makes it so easy for us by all His instructions and guidance and direction and the people He uses to get those messages across to us. But we'll go ahead and have a word of prayer. There's so many prayer requests, so many people in need of prayer and help and encouragement and lifted up. But God has the list, and everybody. So nothing catches Him. We all know nothing catches Him by surprise. So we'll have a word of prayer, then we'll get started. Okay, fellas. God, thank you for this day. Thank you, Father, for all your many blessings, and just thank you for this. For this class. Thank you for the guys in the class and the families they represent. I pray your blessings upon them, and if anybody's going through difficult times or not well, I pray that you or troubled or concerned, I pray that you just touch them, Father, and heal them, and just give them that contentment that we'll talk about today in this lesson, and that just passeth all understanding, that peace that only you can give. And just be with our church family, our church staff, and continue to bless and lead and strengthen and encourage them, Father, during these times. And be with our friends and all, so many going through difficult times. You know each situation. I pray that you'll minister and touch and heal in accordance to your will. Be with our state, our country, and that you just give the leaders discernment and give them wisdom, Father, to make those decisions that would be in accordance to your will. Give us all a good day. Thank you for all the many ways that you bless us in spite of things that are going on, Father. There's so many ways that we're blessed, and keep encouraging and lifting up and strengthening those healthcare workers, Father, across the country, across the world, Father, that are just working endlessly, in their craft and all. That you just encourage them, Father. Just put someone in their path, Father, that might just lift them up and encourage them to keep on keeping on. Give us a good day in your word. And I pray, Father, that everything's said and done will honor and glorify you. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Okay, fellas, like I said, it's from the book of Proverbs. And it's from chapter 14, verses 8 to 15. Now, this is a little bit different this time. I had to look at it to kind of figure out, but what they were trying to do in Proverbs 14, Solomon was using a literary device, and it's called, I'm not sure how to pronounce, chiasmus, and it refers to an arrangement of ideas that is then repeated in reverse order, and the purpose of this is for repetitive and comparative emphasis. And but we'll read the verses and 8 to 15, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. Follow along now, because this goes from verse 8 and then verse 15, and as you'll see in your Sunday school book. But we'll read it and then we'll talk about it. Verse 8, the sensible person's wisdom is to consider his way, but the stupidity of fools deceives them. The inexperienced one believes anything, but the sensible one watches his steps. That was verse 15. This is verse 9. Fools mock at making reparation, but there is goodwill among the upright. Verse 14. The disloyal one will get what his conduct deserves, and a good one what his deeds deserve. Verse 10. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no outsider shares in its joy. Even in laughter, a heart may be sad, and joy may end in grief. The house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. There is a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way to death. A lot of comparison, like I said, and contrast. But Solomon was just he was repeating, it says that he was repeating these themes in reverse order so that God's people would understand the contrast between wise and foolish living. It's pretty much like it was in the past, but now they're just the contrasting verses are right there together. And you can see, right away, what he's talking about and the point he's trying to get across. And it says, Solomon, he put side by side two very distinct ways of thinking and living. And it said, the point he was trying to make was, the end of foolishness is destruction. We all know that. I mean, that's nothing new for us. And the end of wisdom is godliness and peace. So that's really not anything that that should catch us by surprise. We all know that. But I just thought it was interesting, a couple of thoughts, this little beginning informational paragraph that kind of just, throws an example out there of, if we do things, we use some godly wisdom and follow instructions, things will work out. But, say for instance, if you don't follow instructions, if you leave an ingredient out or something, the result is not going to be quite the same, is it? Now I'm not sure. I do cook some, but I'm mainly an assistant, but to the chief cook. But for all of you guys that may cook or something, if you leave something out, it's the end result. It's not going to be just right. And I don't know how Amy's mom. I never saw her for recipe, but I guess that blows that thought all to away. But anyway, she never did. It all tasted great to me. So I don't know if she ever left anything out or not, but it sure didn't seem like she did. But anyway, it makes me think of, and I know you guys have done it. Most all of you have put toys together without looking at the instructions. How many of y'all have done that? And I'm sure most of you have. I have. And you get through and you have pieces left, or either just didn't about halfway through when you figure out, well, I need to kind of follow the instructions on this. So it's kind of comical, frustrating. I don't know about comical, but frustrating, and that you have to go back and try to figure out what in the heck you did. You have to undo what you've done. So it's a mess. But I remember one time, me and two of my brother-in-laws, we were out at midnight putting a trampoline together. Now that's pretty much, it put itself together for the most part. But it was a clear moonlit night, and we had the trampoline. We put it together to surprise the youngins, the next morning. And we did. And I thought that was pretty neat. But we have to follow instructions, don't we? Using God's wisdom, Solomon was trying contrasting following God's wisdom with the foolishness of those that fail to do so. So that's just food for thought there, guys. And it's very interesting. But the first couple of verses is talking about prudence, and Solomon was contrasting the wise and the foolish, and prudence, thinking sensibly, taking your time, not jumping to conclusions and not thinking things through. It says, thinking through an opportunity or a challenge carefully before drawing a conclusion and coming to a decision. That person is sensible. Take your time. Don't just jump to conclusions, think it over. What's going to be the end result? Because there's going to be an end result, isn't there? We have to get the big picture, as my work used to tell me. Our defensive driving, we had 5 keys, and one of them was getting the big picture. And you do have to get the big picture, because whatever you do, whatever decisions you make, there's an ending to it, isn't there? I mean, there's consequences. I hate to keep using that word, but there is. Any decision that we make, whatever it is, whatever situation it is, a decision, we want to make a godly, wise decision. We want to think about it. We want to consider the alternatives, the different things, and make the best decision, according to God. And that's the sensible. And then you have in verse 15, where the inexperienced person, they believe anything that comes along, gullible, just, well, that looks nice, They can be easily enticed by the next new, whatever, anything that comes along. And, you get caught up in that, and you're going to have problems. You may not have problems to start with because it's all going to be all shiny and everything, but, at the end of the day, it may not be as shiny. But, Solomon was trying to, tell the people, considering their decisions that they make, do it based on God's principles and His Word, so don't be, trapped or enticed or drawn in by people with trying to get one over on you, or phone calls or, the different things. It says experience can be a great teacher if coupled with the wise counsel of God. Now, we all have experience. We're being older. We all have experience in a lot of different things, some more than others, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Experience is good because we all fall back on that. We've done things for a long time. May do them now subconsciously. Don't even think about it. But we've got to be careful, guys. Experience without God's wisdom can cause us to be gullible and maybe, wrongly done, by somebody that, that's in the world, so we have to be careful. And here's a good line. Here's a good sentence I think would be well for us to chew on. The wise person seeks to know, understand, and apply the knowledge of God to every life decision. That experience, if you couple it with the wise counsel of God, your end result will be positive, and you'll be pleased. Contentment in verses 9 and 14. But it talks about contrasting fools who making reparation with the upright. That we should always be an upright. We make peace. We try to, we make the reparations. We do what we have to do, and that peace is considered goodwill, and that's what we should do. If we wrong somebody, we should make it right. We should, just going about our merry way. If we wrong somebody, we need to make it right, don't we? We, don't need to let it stew in it because it's going to just fester and get bigger, isn't it? It's not going to go away. You hurt somebody's feelings or do something, an action or whatever it might be. But in verse 9, I thought this was a good thought. Solomon was actually contrasting contentment and discontentment. Foolishness will lead to discontentment, but wise living leads to contentment. And Paul's really a good example right here, and I had a little piece here talking about Paul. And we all know what he went through, And if there was ever a guy that exercised that word, it would be him. I would think you might agree with that. Paul was just content wherever he was. And a lot of places where he was not good. I'll just put it like that for lack of a better word. I said there was plenty of times when he lacked even the basic necessities of life. I mean, he was stoned, beaten, shipwrecked. I mean, he was just in a mess all the time. But he's just a fine example, guys, for us to go by. Each and every time, though, Paul, he learned to be content in the person of Jesus. Contentment in him means that we can be content in our circumstances without being, and I like this. I want to repeat this again. Contentment in him means that we can be content in our circumstances without being content with the circumstances. Now, we don't have to be happy with where we are with the circumstances, but while we're going through them, God would encourage us to be content. Just, Paul, he wasn't necessarily happy with where he was, but while he was in it, he was content. He had peace, and he did. In the Word, and Paul talked about that a lot. And that's what he wanted for everybody else. He was just a great example, guys, for that. And I thought that was quite interesting what he said there. Talking verse 14 is talking about disloyal one, referring to backsliding. If you're living for the Lord, then all of a sudden you return to your former lifestyle, guided by your own desires. He will get what his conduct deserves, as the verse says. And we all will. But a good one, a person who walks in God's wisdom, will get what his deeds deserve too. The just will be rewarded, but the unjust will be rewarded as well. And, again here on down in verse 14, it talks about, Paul's talking about sowing and reaping. There's a deep sense of peace that comes from a clear conscience, isn't there? I mean, we can lay that head down at night on that pillow, and we have a clear conscience, and we're in that state of contentment. We won't toss and turn, will we, all night? We won't thinking about something that happened that, we don't have that clear conscience. I just put down here on the margin, contentment equals a clear conscience, and it does. A clear conscience comes from avoiding what is sinful and embracing what is righteous. We can be content, but we, and where we are, and have that clear conscience, that's when a person's conscience is clear, that person can be at peace with God. And that's what we want. Living out God's wisdom brings the true reward of lasting contentment. And I think that's very vital to us, guys. I mean, to have that peace, that contentment, that clear conscience, that, but verse 10 talks about how people, appearances can be deceiving, and they can. People, you can't judge a book by its cover. We don't know what people are going through. We may to an extent, but not really, unless we really know them, we don't, do we? I mean, we don't know what they're going through. They could smile and laugh and say everything's great, when in reality it's not so great. But Solomon says that even in laughter, like verse 13 says, a heart may be sad and joy may end in grief. Now we know of cases where it appeared somebody was fine, and they said they were fine if they were asked by family, but then, as days go on, something tragic happens. So, we don't need, as believers, we don't need to wear the mask, it says here in the book, to conceal our pain and grief. We don't need to do that, guys. We need to share it. Whatever means you can. There's a lot of channels. So don't hesitate to call, whatever. Call, write, text, whatever you have to do if you're going through a stage where, some issues are going on. But it's talking about godly wisdom results in joy. Genuine joy that comes from an intimate relationship with God. That joy will hold up under the trials of life. It will sustain us. It will hold us, our joy in the Lord, even when our hearts ache, or we're going through that valley in our life, or whatever the situation may be. We don't need to mask our pain and grief. We need to share it. We need to talk it. We need to cling to God and His Word. And, we're not, nobody's exempt from this, are they? I mean, none of us are. Grief awaits all of us. But that joy we have in Christ will hold us up in those times when we most need it. So we need to always be mindful of that grief is going to visit us at some time or another. but through our joy in Jesus Christ, that will hold us up, because we can't do it by ourselves, can we? I mean, we're just not strong enough. But real lasting joy comes in knowing and doing the will of God. And verses 11 and 12 talking about the house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. God's people thrive, even though it appears they have little according to worldly standards. It's like in verse, and I talked about here, about how, in verse 11, how it appears that the house of the wicked will be in a house, but the tent of the upright will be flourished. We'll see how it says the wicked have appeared to be in a more permanent dwelling place, a house, but that the righteous, on the other hand, have appeared, they're just a temporary, have only a temporary place, a tent. But yet it is the wicked who will be destroyed, but the upright will flourish. And what God is saying here, and it's a great point, God's people thrive even though it appears they have little according to worldly standards. We always need to keep that in perspective, guys. Little is much when God is in it. And we live in what the world may think is a tent or a nothing house. As long as God's in it, that's all we need. We don't need anything else. We don't need a mansion. You don't have to have a mansion, because there's many people, the rich man in the Bible, other rich people who, have gone on, but they thought that was the end all to be all, but it wasn't. But let's always be mindful of that. But, also in verse 12, godly wisdom and joy do not always line up with what we think, what the world thinks is wise, or with how the world thinks true happiness is obtained. See, the world's got their ways of thinking how you're going to, obtain happiness and joy and fulfillment, but that's not God's wisdom and joy. And it won't last. That's the difference, I feel like. They make their decisions based on their own thoughts, their own wisdom, and don't base it on godly's wisdom. It may not end up like it says here. When they set up out on a path without being wise in the Lord, they may end up where they did not intend to go. Now, all the money in the world can't buy you happiness. That's been proven. They won't have the wisdom they need to make the best choices with their lives. And that's happened time and time again. So let's always be mindful of those thoughts. And it says here, what matters most is knowing and doing the will of God. With some days, at times, we'll have, God's will leads to days of peaceful tranquility. Just everything's just falling in order. All the places, everything just 1, 2, 3, 4, or so on and so forth. And it's, man, this is great. But then other times, knowing and doing the will of God can lead to great sacrifice and difficulty, can it? Some bumps in the road. We know people in our church family that are going through, those godly people that are going through difficult times. We always need to be mindful of them. But they're going through, and that's what just encourages me, just watching these people go through and they just keep on keeping on. They seem to be content as they can be, but it's difficult. But this last sentence says, but what matters is knowing and doing what is right by the Lord is revealed in his word, not by what we think is right. And like we've said many times before, I hate to be redundant and repetitive, but we need to get ourselves out of the way, don't we? We always, our decision is, our final decision should be based on godly wisdom, not Jim's decision, not my wisdom, but godly wisdom. Just a lot of valuable information here, guys. Information we can use along the way, and I know a lot of it appears to be repetitive, but it's wisdom just encompasses so much. It's our life, isn't it? Godly wisdom the decisions we make, things that we say or do, it makes a lot of difference in how we live and are you content where you are, based on your life and all and everything that's going on. Even in these times, when we've got the virus and everything else and rioting and stuff and all. And, we get all caught up in that. That will discourage us, won't it? But we need to just be discerning. You discern what you're going to watch, listen to, and those different things that will affect you. Whether you want to admit it or not, they will. I mean, your thought process and everything, but just surround yourself with, family, friends that you can be an encouragement to, but they can be an encouragement to you too. And I think your life, based on godly wisdom, the things that we know are right, and, there won't be any waffling, any fence riding. We just know, well, that's not right. This is, this thing about the mask and everything out in public, Well, I mean, we've always worn our mask out in public. We go into different places. And now there's a question about it. There's going to be a big whatever at the Walmart or whatever. I told her I'd like to be a fly on the wall just to watch the people, because you got different, and you know what I'm saying, all kind of different kinds of people that go into Walmart. And some of them, not everybody's going to just, yeah, I'll wear my mask. No, they won't either. But anyway, you use godly wisdom. You just, at the end of the day, everything will just work out. And these last 4 thoughts here before I close. The wise person seeks to understand knowledge. Following God's wisdom leads to contentment. And it does. That's where you're going to get the true contentment, isn't it? You may be content for a season out here in the world, but if you follow God's wisdom, you'll have true contentment, that clear conscience, that laying down at night, won't be tossing and turning, trying to, worrying about what's done and what wasn't done, what was said or not said. But that contentment, that godly contentment based on godly wisdom. God's wisdom produces joy even when there is grief. Now, that's very difficult. Now, I think you can only do that through God's wisdom. But that's where you'll have true joy, even in grief or just a very, very sad situation. God's wisdom leads to his blessings. You use God's wisdom, fellas. I mean, the blessings, a shower of blessings, and we've all had blessings. And I just, we always need to thank the Lord for his many, many blessings and his grace and his mercy. Because at times when you think what could have happened as opposed to what did happen, think, man, that puts things in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, man, I didn't deserve that. And none of us do. But God loved us that much. So fellas, just use these thoughts. It was very just great information. Solomon does a great job and just ties and intertwines everything together. But we know where the source of our strength is. We know who loved us that much, he died on the cross for our sins. So let's always be mindful of that and use that in our lives during these times when things may get us discouraged, may get us down. But use this time to his word and in Proverbs, like we've been studying, to be an encouragement to you, to just lighten up what may be a dark situation or whatever, to be an encouragement. And I think will keep us on that straight and narrow path. Well, fellas, I've enjoyed it again. It seems like it goes by so quickly, but it's very, very interesting. And I encourage you to read it and dwell on it and just, apply it to your life, and you won't go wrong. I miss you guys. I look forward to seeing you in the near future. And until then, we'll just keep on connecting this away. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care of yourselves. See you later. Bye now.